thing for whichever local amateur team provided the most players. They would run the most people. They would run a one-off training session for or something.
Oh, that's a nice way to do things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Shame that they didn't get the win for those kids, though. Look, Rovers should have had a bigger half-time advantage than they had, shouldn't they? And they're going to be frustrated that they didn't. And part of me is happy to criticise Hull KR's attacking that with a mitigation thrown in that they did have injuries both going into the game and picked up during the game. That really didn't help them, both from an attacking point of view in the first half and then an energy point of view in the second half. But I think it's also fair to call out Catalan's scramble defence, because there was quite a few times where it looked like the line was almost broken and then the defender would pop up to cover his mate and any potential gap would quickly get closed. And so looking at it instead of the negative from the Hull KR attack perspective, because Always in Our Shadow covered that perfectly, positive from a Catalan's perspective, it was scrappy but resilient from Catalan's for me to keep the scoreboard down to just one try and win when they were crap in the first half. Catalans, they were terrible.
Yeah, so I watched the first half before going out to our match, and at that point you sort of think, well, both teams have been absolutely awful, really. It's just been a total knock-on-a-thon, who can make the most errors and all the rest of it. And if either team had stopped, they'd be commanding such a lead. But yeah, Rovers just couldn't make any opportunity stick, could they?
No, they didn't. They just kept getting pulled back by either the Catalans' defence or their own errors just before they actually did the clinical thing, and so yeah, it was just a bit off. I think added to that scrappiness and resilience from Catalans, though, there was a little bit of polish with two fantastic tries that were taken well on either wing, so they need to be called out. I mean, Fuad Yahar looked like he nearly concussed himself with his dive and roll for his try. But thankfully he was okay.
Yeah, I saw that today and was quite shocked. I thought he's not that sort of player normally.
Yeah, but it was a fantastic finish. Justice was Tom Davies' finish in the first half. That was a superb finish. And I wanted to touch more on the Davies one, because I was really pleased to see him with that flying type of spectacular finish, because I feel like that's something he hasn't really shown. He shows a lot of effort. He pops up in the right place in the right time and scores a lot of tries. But they're normally not... Spectacular isn't normally what I associate with Tom Davies.
No.
Powerful, strong runner, lots of effort, yes, but spectacular, no. But I think showing that he can do that sort of thing and score that sort of try, where it's one of the ones where a player's diving for the corner and reaches out his hand and gets it inside the corner post whilst the rest of him's disappearing off into touch, and similar to Gary, just kind of hovering up high enough to get it in before he goes into touch, all of that. I think that was a big positive. It reinforces his England credentials, because I think to score in some of the big internationals, sometimes the plays you need to make have to be spectacular, because that's only the amount of space you might get to score. I think back to a couple of Ryan Hall tries against Australia it was at Wembley. It was a double header at Wembley about 8 or 9 years ago, I think, come to thinking about it. But yeah, I think of tries like that and you think sometimes there has to be something spectacular to score. You don't get much more space than that. So that was a big positive, I think. Also, you got to know the build-up play from Tompkins, the long pass, and then we expect it more than we expect it from Ignatius Passy, but it was similar calibre. And then Tyrone May with his little offload, that was pretty special. It was similar to Laffey's.
Yeah, I was saying, I don't feel like Tyrone May is a player that I'm really aware of, but I thought it was very, very good.
Yeah, it's tricky. He's played in so many positions now so far this year for Catalans that you can't really tie him down and say, like, centre's probably his best position if he plays in Super League, but in the NRL it might not have been his best position. And he's hard to tie down, but he's having telling influences on games kind of wherever he plays. So it's been a really good pickup for Catalans, a utility player like that, who came with some sort of baggage from his fallout with the Panthers, but, you know, not quite the level of baggage that deserves front page cover in the newspaper, it turns out, you know. But anyway, that's another story in the other results that we'll get to. But yeah, I think you have to take the positives for Catalans, but be slightly disappointed that this Channel 4 game served up kind of a lot of mistakes.
But also, when we talk about weird kicking styles, is it Artemorg?
Yes, with his little practice swings.
Waving his arm around. What's that about?
I do not know.
Yeah, sorry, we can move on. I just wanted to get that out there.
I think it needed to be said. I think that's fair. Julian Busquet has been playing fantastically well for Catalan since he's back in, but he's going to miss their next game. One match penalty notice for him. Is that against you guys? No, you got Wakefield first, haven't you? We'll be back for you guys. Grade B dangerous contact charge anyway for Julian Busquet, so he gets a one-match penalty notice from that. Hull KR centre Brad Takarangi is set to miss the rest of the season with a torn hamstring. We talked about his injury last week. You know, we don't like players getting injured, but when players do fucking stupid things, we don't feel sad that they're going to miss the rest of the season. So,
no.
Yep, move on from him. Catalans have announced the re-signing of Matthew Laguerre on a 2-year deal. What does Alan call him? Is it I? Yeah, he celebrated that with his interception try where he looked a couple of times like he was so excited that he was going to fall over, but he kept his composure and did score the length of the field interception try. That was a crucial swing point in the game, really, in this game.
Yes, because Rovers were right on the line, weren't they?
They were, and they were still ahead at that point as well, weren't they? So, yeah, great involvement in this game, really built into his career at Catalans. I think, was it last week or the week before, I was saying, like, you watch him play now and you don't think it's a young French player finding his way. You think this is a Super League player.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I guess they're going to be looking for props, so that'll be the next kind of big news we'll start talking about Catalans. Probably Takiaho and people like that will get announced soon to fill in the gaps of the guys that we talked about going to Warrington. Okay, shall we talk about the standings then, Sarah? Super League standings.
I'm afraid we're going to have to talk about the other match on Saturday.
Not a problem. Remarkably, not on TV, but I think we got the most fan views in on this one.
We don't want to upset our listeners, do we, Mark?
No, not at all. Hull FC this year are like what I think Cass a couple of years ago we used to get this many fan views in on their non-televised games, and Leeds we used to get in a lot on their non-televised games. Hull FC we're getting plenty in at the moment. I think it was your second biggest crowd of the year, wasn't it? So that'll have helped as well.
Yeah.
Hull FC 31, Wigan 22 was the final score. It was 18-12 to Hull FC at half-time, so they were able to see it home. 11,396 was that crowd. I think a couple of hundred down on the first home game of the season, but positive crowd number there. Marcus Griffiths was the referee. In terms of the team stats, Wigan had a much better team tackle success rate, but that didn't stop Hull finding gaps with 9 breaks to 5 on the stats, which I don't remember it being 9 breaks to 5, but there you go. Hull made more metres from having more ball. Basically, is how it counted out because the sides made the exact same average gain. Errors were 10 apiece, which again didn't feel like how the game felt. I felt like Wigan made more errors, but there you go.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those stats, I'd have expected it to be a much closer game, and actually when you think it potentially could have been 37-22.
Well, it was 6 tries to 4, weren't it? But, at the same rate, it could have been, when we talk about it, it could have actually been a different result altogether, and Wigan could have won the game as well, which is just as ridiculous. So let's do the individuals first, though, Sarah.
Yeah, so for Hull FC, Adam Swift scored 2 tries and made 138 metres and 2 clean breaks. Connor Wynne with 111 metres. Carlos Tumabavi with 1 try and 109 metres. And Danny Houghton on his 400th appearance with 41 tackles. For the losing Wigan, it was Morgan Smithies who made 50 tackles, of which 10 were marker tackles. Liam Marshall scored 1 try and made 110 metres. John Bateman scored a try, made 7 tackle busts under 105 metres. Bevan French scored a try and made 104 metres.
Yeah, I'm glad Smithies and Bateman were in the stats roundup because I thought they were our best two maybe in this game. At Stozza 1981 said, predictions went well on this one, lads. In quote marks, Connor needs to do it in big games. 5 assists against Wigan proves he can. In quote marks again, Wigan will have one eye on the cup. And then Stozza says, didn't look like that from the stands. Both sides got stuck in. Wigan kept it a good context due to Gale's shite goal kicking. Josh Reynolds' best game in a whole shirt. And the first choice spine finally looked on for the first time. Jack Brown looked immense again.
Always in our shadow said, sublime in attack for the first 20 minutes before a couple of defensive switch-offs let the Pies back in. Quality use of field as foil allowed the score to level at 18-all. A try by Carlos, no idea what happened, and Girl gave breathing room before the game was closed again. Touch finding kick-off set position for Satai to crash over, all rounded off with a brain fart sin binning.
I don't think it was a brain fart. I think he knew what he was doing. He's just a fucking bell end.
Yeah.
But, the game was won by that point. The fact that he had the temerity to argue with the referee. So for people who don't know what happened, right, Wigan... basically, the game was over, wasn't it? But Wigan had...
The hoops were gone, but Wigan had stood up to play the ball, and Gale decided to kick the ball away from an offside position.
Yeah, Wigan just played the ball fractionally before the hooter went, and Gale, from an offside position, just kicked the ball into touch. So the referee had no choice but to give a penalty, which meant the game had to go on for a bit longer, and no choice really to sin bin for deliberate professional foul play, even though it wasn't going to change the result at that point. Luke Gale, who then decided to argue with him about it and start pointing at the clock saying, look how long's left. It's like, don't fucking be a dick. There would have been less left if you let them play the ball, you bell end.
At the end of the day, right, we could have let you play the ball, you could have scored and converted, and it'd have made no difference to the result.
Exactly. So why is he doing it?
Well, because he's an idiot.
Yeah. The referee, sometimes you don't get the choice to be flexible about these things. When something does something that blatant, you have to punish it by what the rules say, not by what the clock says.
Yeah.
Anyway, especially when it's someone who's chirping back at you. B. Dawson 1902 said, 6 out of 7 at home this season and the only loss coming to the back-to-back champions. The Alpha Betty Spaghetti Stadium is becoming a real fortress, so let's kick on and find some away form. From 1 to 17, everyone except Gale was great, even Reynolds in brackets. Scoreline flattered Wigan, but they just kept in it like you'd expect and took their chances. Liggy Sow is a god among men. Oh, and lol Rovers.
Bishop Louis 98 said, Jake Connor showing Wayne why he should be in with a shout for England. A big game in which he stepped up for us, finally. Tore Wigan's edge defence apart, ticking along nicely with an average at best halves pairing. You know it's not your day when even the grub scores. We need to get Mao signed up for another year ASAP. Skittles defenders for fun.
Esther said, Wigan get battered everywhere they go. We were brilliant to start with, but Gale kept missing. Then we let you score. Was worried after your last try, but what a kick-off by Jake. No one stops Big Chris at the end. Monster.
Kenny B, at KBHFC99, said, Hull was great today, but you can tell Wigan didn't want to get any injuries or bans with the cup final next week. A win is a win, and now on to Wakey away. Come on, you all are.
And SL Review said, shipping news with the surprise win over Hair Extensions team looking forward to next week. I think you'll have most to say about this because it sounds like a lot of Hull fans thought it was one of your best performances of the year. I would, on Reynolds, throw in a cautionary note of you might have felt differently if he'd have timed his dive for his try only fractionally worse than he did, because he was so close to putting his
It's
hand.
the second time he's done that. Like, put the ball down when you get over the line. Don't go for the dead ball line.
He was so close to his hand touching the dead ball line before he put the ball line down. Yeah. Anyway, just to sort of give an overview from a Wigan perspective, it felt like a carbon copy of